Today in Memo to the President, the topic is decreasing poverty and increasing opportunity in America. Hello, I'm Gigi Hinton, along with senior fellow Becky Blank, author of the memo. Becky, you say throughout his campaign, President-elect Obama did address, and quite adequately, I think he talked about the issue of poverty in this country, the need to increase educational and job opportunities for more Americans. It's a critical situation here. What is the situation as you write about it?
So obviously, as the recession gets worse, poverty is going to get worse in this country as well. Last year, 1 in 8 Americans were in poverty, and that number is only going to increase in the next year or two.
Okay. So you say there are three goals to address the problem of poverty in this country. Can we talk about each of those? The first one would be supporting low-wage workers and incentivizing them.
So one of the things that President-elect Obama has proposed is an expansion in the Earned Income Tax Credit, which provides subsidies to low-wage work. And right now it's a relatively large credit for families with children. The proposal is to expand that to single individuals, to married couples who don't have children resident in their family, but who may well be connected to children or to other family members to whom they support.
And this seems critical to me. I mean,
the expansions in the Earned Income Tax Credit we did under President Clinton for families with children were very, very important in helping moms get to work and making low-wage work pay. And giving that same opportunity that makes work pay to single men, to married couples without kids is just as important.
Okay. Yeah. Another thing you say that is critical is ensuring an effective safety net. What do you mean by that?
So, we went through a major welfare reform in the 1990s, and there are a number of people who, I think we went too far. We have growing numbers of women who are neither on welfare nor working, and it's really time to go back and revisit some of the things that we did in the 1990s and see whether there really are some people who ought to have more access to cash welfare, particularly in a time when unemployment is rising rapidly. The other type of safety net is an unemployment insurance safety net for those who lose their jobs, which also does not work very effectively for low-skilled workers. And reforming the unemployment insurance system is another thing that candidate Obama talked about on a number of occasions that I hope President Obama will take on.
Okay, and the other of your three key goals is creating opportunities in high-poverty neighborhoods. Tell me about that.
Yes, President-elect Obama has talked about expanding a program called Promise Neighborhoods in 20 new neighborhoods. This takes schools at the center of it and tries to create neighborhoods that work for kids, improving schools, improving preschool opportunities, helping families to serve kids better. I think that's a great idea. In addition, we also really, of course, need to worry about the neighborhoods that are heavily impacted by the mortgage foreclosure problem and really focus on those high foreclosure neighborhoods where everybody's lost value, where houses just aren't moving. There are a number of neighborhood-specific issues that I really hope this administration will take on.
And with these three goals, you say there is still a very important cross-cutting need, and that is improving opportunities for children.
That's right. Preschool opportunities in particular is something that we know works and we should be doing far more of. More funding for post-secondary education. Both of those, again, were on candidate Obama's list, and I hope they're high priorities for his new administration.
You say there's one other component to modernize poverty measurement. Tell me about that.
Our current poverty measure was defined in the early 60s based on data from the 1950s. It is long past time to recreate a new measure of poverty that really much more effectively measures who's poor, what the needs are, and how effectively our policies are helping low-income families.
All right. Thank you, Becky. And you can read the full report on our website. That's www.brookings.edu. Thank you for joining us. We'll see you next week.
I think President-elect Obama should increase the programs in the high schools.
Education is the basis to everything.
Our hope is that we'll see the President and the Congress move very aggressively to
creating jobs that people would be able to progress in, and that's what I think.
Hello, I'm Ron Nesson, along with Brookings Senior Fellow Steve Hess, author of What Do We Do Now?, a workbook for the President-elect. Steve, I want to talk a little bit about the Congressional Relations Chief, and you recommend that be one of the very first appointments, and President-elect Obama followed your advice because he named Philip Shaliro, a veteran staff member from Capitol Hill, as one of his very first appointments, and that will be his legislative affairs officer, I think is what it's called. Why is it important to do that?
Well, frankly, we just don't have a parliamentary system. We have the Article 1 and Article 2, the executive branch and the legislative branch. And that's the person who bridges between the two. That's the person who is always in a car going back and forth between the White House and Capitol Hill. It's the person who's negotiating on the behalf of the president for his most important pieces of legislation, and of course has a staff up there sort of giving him intelligence on what the chances are, the vote counting, and what he can bargain for. So that's a very, very important job.
Now, the Democrats, of course, control both the Senate and the House, and, of course, the White House. So shouldn't life be easier for President Obama with a Democratic Congress?
Well, it's going to be easier than if we had divided government, of course. On the other hand, our parties are really not very monolithic. Let's take a case like oil. Well, there are Democrats from Louisiana and Texas representing oil states, and they're going to be very different from Democrats from Alabama or Oregon or Washington State. So you see the regional interests involved, all sorts of interests that have to be blended. You're better off if you got them of your party, but the differences go way beyond party.
Let me ask you a related question to that. President Obama has some very strong rules about lobbyists serving in his administration, his transition office, and so forth. Is that really practical in a city like this, where everybody at one point or another is lobbied for something?
Well, it at least has to make it clear that you're not lobbying for something that you once represent or are going to represent. Clearly it's useful to know something, which is lobbying, but it is very questionable to be in a position where you're lobbying for a former client, and that's where you have to recuse yourself.
You have a couple of rules for who this person ought to be. It ought to be somebody who has the trust of the congressional leadership of both parties. Yeah. And and that the new president ought to have a recusal commitment, that no contact with former clients with matters before Congress, and also require a 4-year commitment. Now, that's the one that I'd like to ask you about.
Well, let's hope that you can do that. It's a wearing job. You may wear out your batteries after a while, but it'd be a very useful thing if you could get a team that's going to be in there for your full time in office. That used to be the case, and recently it just wears people out. It's not the same as it.
Thank you very much, Steve. We'll be back next week. I'm Ron Nesson.
Be a part of the presidential transition. Join our pundits and experts for The Scouting Report, our live web chat every Wednesday afternoon at 12:30. Log on to www.brookings.edu/transition.